When you live in the kind of place that gives you great access to natural spaces, it is pretty common for people to go outside and take advantage of it. You'll hear your coworkers talk about their weekend hiking trips. Your friends will post pictures from outdoor adventures. And the parents that you know will pack up the kids and head outside to make new memories with them. Most of the time, these little local adventures are a lot of fun. But some stories just don't have a happy ending. My name is Brienne, and I'm the host and creator of Among the Dirt and Trees, a show where we explore true crime cases that occur out in nature. In today's episode, we're going to discuss the 1974 disappearance and eventual murder of the Cowdens, a family of 4 that went on a simple camping trip and never made it back in time for family dinner. The Cowden family was composed of 5 members in total. Belinda Cowden, the mother, Richard Cowden, the father, 2 little ones, David, who was 5, and Melissa, who was only 6 months old, and their dog, Droopy. On September 1st, they decided to send off their summer by visiting a local Oregon campground in the Siskiyou Mountains. Now, this was not actually a planned trip, more like a happy surprise after it became clear that Richard wouldn't be able to finish a project he was working on. They packed up all the essentials, diaper bag and all, and ventured out to a camping spot for Labor Day weekend. By all accounts, they did everything right. They had the right supplies, and family knew exactly where to find them. Unfortunately, it doesn't appear that their preparation could save them from this terrible attack. But before there was an attack, there was just a disappearance. After the camping trip, the Cowdens were going to stop by and visit Grandma, Belinda's mother, for a delicious family dinner. The only problem was that Belinda's mother made this meal and the family never showed up. When they didn't show up, Belinda's mom decided to go looking for them to make sure that everything was okay. She went straight to their campsite and ultimately was met with a confusing sight. Their campsite and all of their supplies were there, clear as day. Even expensive items like wallets and purses and car keys were found at the campsite. This was understandably concerning because the family was nowhere to be seen. It looked like they were just there, but they weren't. And as Belinda's mom continued to look for them, her worry began to grow. They didn't seem to be anywhere nearby either, and they never showed back up at the campsite. After waiting, she decided to call the police. When police first started looking for the family, they had no reason to suspect foul play. Nothing was stolen. There weren't any clear signs of a struggle. At the time, it was more likely that the family simply wandered off and lost their way. Maybe went on a hike and got turned around. Police led an extensive search that included the use of quite a few people and some pretty fancy technology at the time, but they couldn't find a single trace of them. Adding to the tension, the family disappeared into the woods during hunting season. Even though it did make it more likely that the family might be found, it also meant that they might actually be in harm's way. Eventually, police had to give the search up. Wherever the Cowdens had wandered off to, they weren't anywhere that anyone could seem to find. Their dog showed up one day after they disappeared. Then, 7 months passed. Fall and winter came and went, and spring arrived in Oregon. With the warmth of the sun and the crisp air, it was a perfect time to venture out for a hike and explore the natural resources of the land. But spring hikes can be tricky. The temperatures can change a lot and pretty quickly. There is this constant chance of rain. Your boots can get pretty muddy. And sometimes you stumble across a body that has presumably been there for about 7 months. 2 locals found the body of a man tied to a tree. They called police immediately. Police arrived on the scene to confirm the findings of these locals, and the search began anew. They strongly suspected that the man was none other than Richard Cowden. And when search efforts led to a nearby cave that had clearly been blocked off with stacked rocks and 3 more bodies were found inside, 1 woman and 2 children, it was more or less confirmed. Dental records ultimately proved that it was the Cowden family, but police still had no idea what happened to them. The causes of death were messy and confusing. Belinda was very clearly shot, and the kids each experienced their own physical trauma. Richard's death remains a mystery, but it is believed that it had something to do with him being tied to that tree. What makes this mystery even stranger is the timeline and the placement of the bodies. The morning that the Cowden family disappeared, Richard and David had walked over into town to get some milk. Now, as we all know, milk doesn't hold particularly well, especially not when it's warm out. The milk that Richard purchased that morning was still sitting on the table when people started investigating the campsite. It seems like Richard and David were seen, and a short while later, the entire family disappeared. When they were found, they were over 7 miles away from their original campsite, which begs the question, how did they end up there? Something strange about this case is the arrangement of the bodies themselves. There are a few things that stick out here. The first being, why was Richard alone? And how did he end up tied up to that tree? The next question was about Belinda and the kids. Police actually don't think that they were killed in that cave. They think they were moved there after being murdered, which leads us to the most concerning question of, when did this happen? The when of the story might not seem all that interesting. You probably assume that it happened when they were kidnapped. But it's actually possible that isn't true. At least not when it comes to their final resting place. Or, I guess, second to final. The cave where Belinda and her children were found had actually been thoroughly checked in the earlier searches. And it seems pretty likely that searchers also passed by the tree that Richard ended up being tied up to. This means that it is possible, and maybe even likely, that whoever kidnapped the family waited until after the area was picked over to place the bodies. Unfortunately, all we really have with this case is more questions. Who could abduct a family of 4? And how did they do it? Why was the family separated? And why did the killer or killers target them? There are so many unknowns in this case, but there's one pretty chilling truth that we have to acknowledge. Since the attacker or attackers left behind the family's wallets and purses, expensive gear, and even the keys to their car, it seems pretty obvious that they abducted the family specifically to murder them, not for any other reason. Of course, I guess it is also possible that the Cowden family saw something that they weren't meant to see. There is one primary suspect in this case, a man named Dwayne Little, who had a pretty terrible rap sheet and whose former prison friend said that Little once admitted to killing the Cowdens. A lot of people believe he absolutely did it, but police never managed to make a strong enough case to link him to it despite the pretty clear indications that he was in the area. In the eyes of the law, at least, the murders of the Cowdens remain a mystery to this day. So, if you would like to discuss camping in Oregon, tips for keeping kids safe outside, or your favorite family dinner meal, feel free to contact me on Twitter or Instagram using the tag @datpod. Thanks, guys.